Welcome to episode 13 of Founders and Funders Australia. This week I have Helena from GoFigr. Welcome to the show, Helena.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, for those of our listeners who have not heard of GoFigr before, briefly tell us what GoFigr does.
We are an Australian career tech platform that focuses on connecting the skills and aspirations of internal workforces to existing opportunities in their business. And we do that so that they can find upskilling opportunities, new roles where they work, increase their economic prosperity, and at the same time, so that the organization can maximize the talent it already has, retain great people and move them to where they need to be. So we're 4 years old. We started during the pandemic. We'll maybe talk about that later.
Yeah,
And we're now global. So that's a bit about what we do.
excellent. Before we go deeper in GoFigr, tell us a little bit more about you. Where did you grow up and what were some of the key influences in your childhood?
Well, you can probably tell by the accent I'm British, but I've been here in Australia for nearly 10 years now. I was born in the southeast of the UK, so in a very small village in the middle of nowhere, so sort of semi-rural, reasonably affluent. I didn't grow up with heaps of money. I was a latchkey kid, so I was talking to a really good friend recently. We used to go out and just wander around fields and climb trees. The mood took us. It's a miracle I'm still alive, really. Had a really I don't know, safe and fun childhood, no dramas there really. Tried uni, decided it wasn't for me, so I left quite early in uni, and then I fell into a recruitment job. I was sort of looking at the world and thinking, okay, well, if uni's not for me, how am I going to make money? Fell into a recruitment role. So yeah, I had a kind of 80s upbringing, let's say. So anyone listening of that demographic will know how loose and wild that was.
Nice. And so you decided uni wasn't for you. What was your first role and where?
I innocently applied for a role for a big global HR services company called Adecco. And I have to say, I had no idea that Adecco was global. It was just local to me. It was an industrial recruitment branch that supplied post office workers and pickers and packers and so on. But I had a fabulous boss, a fabulous team. And because it was a big company, there was lots of internal opportunities. So I sort of hustled my way through that company for 5 years. But that's how I ended up in the kind of adjacent world of HR, really. But it was quite by accident.
Nice. And how do you go from working in a global company in HR to wanting to get into starting your own company?
It wasn't immediate, and I probably would have said in my 20s, I would have never imagined this future for myself. But it was a series of fortunate events, all unplanned, all unstructured, all very fortunate. If I fast forward a bit to maybe, I don't know, 12 or 13 years ago, I took a role at Randstad in the UK, and that was in their managed services arm. It was a really cool role. Had me looking at different technologies to optimize processes for our customers, for our staff, for our end users. And Randstad had at the time about an 80 million euro fund to invest in HR technology. So when I migrated over to Australia, they were very kind to me and they found a role for me in their IT team, which is where I met my co-founder, Nick. And Nick and I ran an 18-month project. He was actually my boss to implement some of these different technologies that the company had invested in across our business. And so that got me in touch with the investment arm, that got me exposure to the different technologies, some of the founders. And these probably weren't the big, scary people I'd imagined. They were very hardworking, they were hustlers, they were really good problem solvers. And it was just a really fantastic project. So that was my sort of first exposure into the world of startups, I would say. I left there and took an innovation role at Deloitte. I was very seduced by the world of innovation and the role. It was a great role. It was a great experience, some fantastic people. But I think I just was too disobedient for that type of organization. It's big. It's probably hard to, make me change. Let's say we ran some fantastic initiatives there, but just not the environment for me to thrive. And really my first foray really into the world of startup was quite by accident. I saw Antler, which is a global VC, and they run an accelerator program. So I went through startup school. So I applied for the Antler position after I'd quit Deloitte, actually, just before the started, and did a 16-week program to go to startup school. So that's kind of my potted history. Quite by accident, weird timing. The world led me to where I should be today. I'd say that's probably how I got there.
Nice. I always find when I hear about these large enterprise incubator programs, such a large disconnect of trying to be very nimble while having very large scale enterprise processes and culture. Is that true on the inside? Because that's how I feel on the outside when I hear about them.
It is, and there's a term intrapreneur that I've heard used a lot, and it's like a massively difficult role. The beauty of those kind of roles is that you're well funded, you've got critical mass, great data, amazing talent around you, and in the right organizations, you've got resources and budgets, and the desire to move forward. But you're fighting against the immune system,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you know trying to make any change is just hard, and it can be slow. So I've seen some programs work exceptionally well. I have a really positive opinion of the Crew X15 Ventures, for example,
Yeah.
model. Right, I think that it's really well resourced. There's a massive strategic focus. It's got senior endorsement, but it is a hard role. It's a really fun role. You have to hustle, but yeah, it's a pretty tough role.
Yeah. I actually just interviewed James from Antler Group and heard about the program. And he tells me about the success stories, but also the rigor they put through screening the founders, helping them assess compatibility, and also sitting in early stage funding these startups and subsequent rounds. What was your experience like there?
Really positive, actually. I quite frankly, Nick and I wouldn't have a business without the support of Antler. Now our path was ever so slightly different. We had a third co-founder who subsequently left the business, but we joined kind of thinking we might work together, but not being entirely sure. We didn't come with an idea. Many people in the program did, and lots of those ideas were dismantled and abandoned. They worked really hard on creating conditions where great people and ideas can collide. Network's amazing. Their investor network, we were really shoved in front of investors, probably way too early, but the network effect of Antler is amazing. And like I say, we wouldn't have a business without them. And James helps me still now, even, we're coming up just over 4 years now. I have a good support network there. We've raised our seed round now. So we have a new lead investor. So the team at Aliovia they sit on our board. They're our primary source of support, but Antler's still fantastic. And I still do a bit of coaching and mentoring and go to some of the events, especially now
Hmm.
they've launched in Queensland. So I've really positive things to say about Antler personally.
Tell me about the earlier days at Antler and what were some of the ideas that came to mind?
So Antler runs a design sprint process. So you pitch a kind of idea in the week before, and your job is to recruit people in the cohort to work on brainstorming this idea and proving or disproving it. And you have a day to kind of intensely work on this idea and pitch to the rest of the group at the end of the day. Landed on the GoFigr concept. We were originally Flow of Work. We rebranded a couple of years ago, but we landed on that quite early, actually. I remember thinking this idea is insane. I've changed my opinion on that now. We at one point, I think, decided to call ourselves Skillery. So we were focused just on upskilling and reskilling. I'm pretty sure we had an idea in talent acquisition or recruitment, although I can't remember it. There was a logo that involved a rocket. I look back sometimes on our old pitch decks and I laugh, and probably in 5 years' time, I'll maybe laugh at what we're doing now. But we focused on the idea really quite quickly and decided to, Antler calls it track out and focus on pursuing this idea after we got great feedback from the group. We spoke to some early customers in our network and the idea seemed to resonate. So we decided on this concept quite early on, which is now GoFigr.
Nice. So when you were doing these research, these design sprints, and how did you how did the problem you want to solve come to the forefront? Is this something you've been very passionate about for a long time? Or is it
Yeah.
something that came up during the sprints?
A bit of both, actually. Of course, you bring your lived experience to the table, right? To go and do a startup, you have to be a bit insane. You have to be like so fixated on this problem or idea that you're willing to throw away your lovely, safe corporate job and all, future security to go and pursue this, right? So you do have to be a bit crazy. But really, in some of my last roles, and in one particular, I did a piece of research on this, actually. So it'll be obvious who I'm talking about, whilst I won't disclose the name. For one of my past employees, we looked at turnover in the organization. So why were we losing people and what was the impact of that? And the short summary is that we were losing people with 4 to 6 years tenure. So this was our early talent population. We'd invested a lot of time and money and energy in one another, right? From both sides of the fence. And losing that early talent was costing us our leadership pipeline. It was hurting customer retention. It was loss of IP, all the things that you would expect, right? But given that that company, our product was our people, we sort of asked the question of some of the smart people in the organization, particularly in strategy, actually, or did we care? Were we okay that we were losing people at the rate we were losing them? And I think the answer to that question is we were not okay. So we did a 2-stream project. It was super fun, actually. We managed to hustle together some of the big brains in the consulting part of the business to go back on 6 years of historical data and work out what it was costing the business. So for the economically minded of the population, how much was this costing? And I won't disclose the number, but it was material, eye-watering. And if you could have made money in any company, you'd be pretty happy. And then from a people impact, like, what was it doing to our people, our pipeline, our customer, their mental health, and all of the kind of support network going around, just filling up this leaking bucket. And our exit data told us kind of what we already knew, which is the reason people leave us is they cannot see a career future for themselves here, or they've been promised better career prospects elsewhere. Money ranks importantly, especially if you're paying people terribly. But one of the key drivers that people leave is they're bored, they're unstimulated, they can't see a pathway for promotion or growth for themselves. And it's just a dumb reason to lose people. Actually, into mid to large organizations where there's projects galore, there's always a new initiative running. There's always an area of the business that's growing or failing or struggling or needs talent. So it came out of that is how do we connect people who are dissatisfied or want something more in their company with all of the opportunity we've got available. And in most companies, you've got better data on your people on LinkedIn than you have internally, which is
Yeah.
wild, right? So recruitment team where, they could easily post a job or they could easily source on LinkedIn, but they just had no such capability to source internally. So the concept was born there is like, how could we create tools to better collect information about our people's skills, what they were learning in their spare time, what were their career aspirations, what would they love to try, and how could we connect them to existing opportunities like projects, client projects, initiatives, new openings, or international opportunities. It just seemed like a really dumb problem that technology could play a role in solving, and no one had at that time really cracked it. So that's where we decided to play.
Nice. And so you found a problem. You have a solution in mind. How did you a large solution? How did you refine it to something that you could ship and get customers to use? And how did you launch your first version and fund it?
So CTO hadn't joined at that time. So he was still working full time. So it felt really awful at the time not to be able to build anything, but it was
Yeah.
actually it turned out in our favor. So we hired the services of a fantastic company led by a lady called Tara Van Amarungan, who's a really senior design leader at Atlassian now, who took on a sort of part-time 6-week design sprint, zooming into the employee life cycle. So they sort of tutored us on documenting the employee life cycle, working out the emotional highs and lows, the pain points. And in that process, we decided where we wanted to play. And every week we would go and interview 40 to 60 people. So we would post on LinkedIn asking for people to meet us. We would interview friends, colleagues, friends of friends, colleagues of colleagues, just to really narrow down the scope of where we wanted to play. Everything was Figma prototypes. We didn't build a
Nice.
script for months. Like,
Yeah.
really did follow some of the lean startup principles. We didn't have a choice, right? We had
Yeah, no development team.
we had no full-time developer. We had no choice. We found a customer in the US who were looking for a solution to a problem that they had, which is how do they give people visibility of their career pathways, their options, career progression. Pitched this concept to them. We were very transparent that this was a prototype. We weren't pitching a system. We would be working alongside them. We would be in co-creation. We charged a very modest fee for our services. They were super. They still remain a customer now. They were just really. They were one of the first culture amp customers. They just like working with
Oh,
startups. They just wanted something that they could have a voice in designing. Off the back of that first client win, we went back to market and said, all right, dear investors, we've got some traction. We've customers in the pipeline, one secured. Would you like to fund us? So through my network and the network of Antler, we secured some more pre-seed funding, hired a very, very small team, mix of contractors, freelancers and us, and went through a 3-month build process and put it in our customers' hands about 4 months later. It was intense.
Nice. How did you find that customer? How did they find you?
On a Facebook group.
No way.
Yeah.
How are you active in Facebook? Were you
I'm,
looking for volunteers, or what kind of group is this?
gosh, I read a lot and I'm in all sorts of weird and wonderful groups anyway. So from my past life, it was actually my co-founder at the time who found this person. So the lady at the client had seen a competitive product and was asking some questions, wasn't quite the right fit for them because they were a sort of smaller end of the mid-sized market. And she was asking this for who knew anyone else who could do something fit for them. So we reached out on Facebook. We had a few calls with them, pitched this concept, and yeah, the rest is history.
That's incredible. Really good. And so they were your first customer.
Wow.
Sounds great. What were some of the challenges that you faced early on?
Man, where to start? Building tech is freaking hard and freaking expensive, and your eyes are always bigger than your stomach in terms of what you're capable of building and how quickly. What we did, I think, really well, and I would credit Nick with this, is he's a software developer turned consultant. So this guy's unbelievable at scoping and attention to detail and technical architecture. We had to quickly find a third-party provider to provide us with some of the skills and labor market data that we needed. Found someone from our past life there. They're really an excellent and important partner to us. So then we had to do an integration. We had to find tooling for our UI. We had to think about data security and sovereignty. It's so hard, I think, to enter the market now because of some of the technical hurdles and what customers expect. Oh my God, we made some mistakes. It cost us more, it took us longer. But we delivered it in 4 months. We said 3, we delivered in 4. So we weren't too upset about that. Yeah, I don't know. We definitely made some mistakes and missteps, but I just think the time it takes to stitch everything together is you always underestimate, let's say.
I think so, with coding for sure. And I think that's why there's such a growth in low code, no code solutions for people to move quickly to validate their ideas, to get feedback from their customers, and then build something that's more accurate to their vision. But there's oftentimes we build things that takes longer and it doesn't meet the market. And then you spend a lot of time on it.
That's where I'm happy, though. I am happy that I don't think we built anything. Nothing went into any kind of coding until probably
You're
7 or 8.
confident.
Yeah, 7 or 8 months after we got that first check from Antler. So at the time it felt awful and slow and frustrating and like we weren't moving fast enough because some of our peers had like product in market by then. But I'm actually happy because if we'd got that wrong, that first check from Antler, that very far and you can burn through that super quickly and we'd have had nothing to show for ourselves. So it turned up being a
Yeah. I have a startup that I created last year, and something that runs across my mind often is giving up a portion of your company in exchange for capital. And did that run across your mind of should you hold out longer before you raise capital? Because it's one of those things about dilution, and the longer you wait, where the company's more valuable, then the less you can give away and for the capital. What's your view on this?
I remember vividly the 3 of us at the time, the 3 co-founders at the time, we were all in Sydney at that time. I remember walking along one of the beaches, I think in the Northern Beaches, just going, okay, we take this check. This is, it's not all going to be easy, right? This sets us on a growth trajectory and, investors have expectations. They don't do it out of the kindness of their heart.
No.
And we did have a long conversation about, was this the right thing? I have full admiration for people who bootstrap. I just don't know how they do it. I don't know how. You have to have an enormous personal reserve of capital or a partner who can fund your lifestyle, right?
Yes.
Uh, and that knocks out so many entrepreneurs, I think, because you have to live and pay rent and support kids and, buy
Yeah.
groceries and all that kind of stuff. So we just we just couldn't have done it any other way. There was no way that we were ever going to go commit to this thing, or we could have ever brought software to life without taking that injection of capital. We'd got that far. There were clearly smart people at Antler that believed in us, and we just thought, if we don't do it now, we'll never do it. So
Yeah.
plunge. And yeah, look, having investors, gosh, sets expectations high.
Yes.
We're really fortunate. We've got this unbelievable cap table of private angel investors and institutional investors. I love our investors. I'd say with a couple of exceptions, I speak to them all a month, once every other month. I've got this pool of unbelievable people around me now to ask questions, to get connections. Many of our customer wins have come through the network of our investors. Yeah, I'd say you have to think carefully about it. It's not for everyone, but I'm glad we did it. I'm really glad we did.
Did the capital raise, the initial injection, include the salaries to help fund the living costs so that you can focus on GoFigure?
Two of us took no money for the first year or so. I probably didn't take a salary until maybe 15 or 16 months in. Again, my personal circumstances, very supportive partner allowed me to do that. Not all of our circumstances were the same. So one of my co-founders is the primary breadwinner, so that just wasn't a possibility for that person. So we all, and even when we started, we took incredibly modest salaries. And make no mistake, I don't pay myself a fortune now. And that was probably one of the other things. I don't know. You can tell yourself you're okay on this really crap salary. You can't really imagine what it's going to be like 3 or 4 years on. Still be on the sort of same salary you had when you were in your early 20s. I don't know. You can be told this and you can hear these words, but that, yeah, I don't know, caution to prospect founders out there. You have to really look yourself hard, and your partner, if you have one, and your, lifestyle, and think whether you can sustain the lifestyle that you really want on, little to no money. Yeah, we paid ourselves tiny little salaries, more of, I don't know, I'm probably one of the lowest paid in the team right now. And I will be for the foreseeable, I imagine.
And so we talked about funding the idea so that you can build it and then finding your first customer. After you found that customer, what was it like to grow the business? Was it much easier to scale once you had one live customer, or how did you proceed?
Easier, but not much easier, I would say. Look, it always helps to be able to go to other customers and say, this is what we're doing with this really cool customer. We think we think you'd benefit. We'd like to show you what we're doing. But sales has been and remains one of the hardest parts of this job. HR tech and career tech, look, it's a big market, but there's a lot of competition for attention. There are some amazing players out there globally. And, you're pitching often to HR teams who aren't always the best funded, or they don't always have a seat at the strategic table. So it's freaking hard. Selling is definitely the hardest part of the role. But yeah, every time you bring on a new customer, you learn. Every time you lose a customer or you fail to secure a pitch, you learn and you improve. So it gets easier. I definitely wouldn't say it's easy now.
Yeah. And what are some of the results you've seen in what GoFigure has been able to do to help organizations become more skill-based and leverage AI for HR? What are some of the outcomes you've seen for your customers?
One of our really early customers had to close a department down, and I'm really proud that they were able to use GoFigure to find new homes for the majority of those people.
Mhm.
And these were different departments and functions that they wouldn't have thought about themselves. And for the couple of people who ended up leaving the company, we gave them back their skill profile. So we left them with a really lovely overview of the skills that they had that they could go and take away and use in their pursuit for new roles outside of the company. So I'm really proud of that one. That meant a lot, actually, that we were able to help redeploy some of those people that might otherwise have found themselves without a job. And we found out last year that one of our users ended up using one of our experiences to identify his interest in generative AI. And he's now the head of generative AI in that company. And
Okay.
that's super cool for so many different reasons. Like, that's not a job that exists.
Mhm.
That's not a job that they would have advertised. And through a platform, he was able to kind of articulate his goals, and really clarify them, articulate why he had the talent to do this, and he was able to secure that position. So those are some of the kind of like that. It means a lot when we hear and see that in our data that we've actually made a difference to someone's economic prosperity. And we also love saving clients money, right? So
Yeah.
there's loads of different kind of conflicting stats out there, but it's pretty clear to see that it costs about 1 to 2 times an employee's salary to lose someone, right? And rack that up,
Hmm.
I don't know, a 2,000 person company with really average attrition. This is like multi-millions of dollars kind of flowing out the door. It's just nonsensical. Every time we can save a customer money by retaining someone or allowing someone that otherwise might not have been promoted to get promoted, I get an enormous amount of personal satisfaction. So those are the kind of things that keep me going.
Yeah. I think knowing you have such major impact financially for large organizations is very impactful. Tell us a little bit more about the commercial model of GoFigr. How does it work for your clients? Since there's such a large opportunity for them, as you discussed, how do you price your product?
It emerging, right? Honestly, wow.
Yeah.
It's been exploratory.
Okay.
Generally, our customers are on a subscription-based model, so a per user per month or per user per year subscription. We've been experimenting lately with a usage-based pricing model, so making sure that we have skin in the game, so clients only pay for what they use us for. On the odd occasion, we get some weird and wonderful projects come in from clients. We're thinking of doing this. Can you help us? And as long as it advances the product and as long as we have the capacity and capability, we'll do it. We did a really cool project with a company last year using generative AI to help them streamline their job architecture and rationalize like thousands of jobs into a much more streamlined process. So every so often we'll do an interesting project with our client. And then some of our clients like to co-create and customize. So if they have a weird and wonderful idea for a feature, we're not going to be able to do this forever, but we'll definitely go into co-creation with them. And in some cases they pay us. And in some cases we just we jiggle our roadmap a bit. So different ways that we monetize the app, but typically a subscription-based model.
Yeah. I remember my time in Big Four consulting and our department that did supply chain. I remember their rates are super low on a consulting basis because they got a percentage of cost savings for procurement. So
Interesting.
yeah, and I think that's what it reminds me of when you talk about this large opportunity with organizations and their people is having skin in the game, aligning incentive structures. And if I was creating a service, I would probably price it cheap to get lots of users, but then also have a way of measuring impact and then splitting the benefits.
Like cost of attrition is a really interesting one, right? No, it's not a big scary red line on your P&L. It's this kind
Mhm.
of opaque vaporous
Yeah.
number that we all kind of know is a problem, but no one's really scrutinized on fixing it. And I reckon if anyone did just do some basic mathematics, so just, I don't know, go super conservative. Let's just say every person you lost last year, even if you just said it was 10K or half of their annual salary, I
Mhm.
think you'd be pretty horrified at the economic impact on that. But it's kind of one of those hidden numbers that
Yeah.
a bit unscrutinized, but there are smart people out there looking at that and looking at that cost opportunity. And there are some really smart HR operators out there looking like that and really thinking commercially about how they support their internal customer, i.e. the business. But yeah, like my dream would be that it's sat there as a big red line, because I'm sure a few people would be smacked around the head to fix it if we could see it more clearly.
Yeah. Especially when I was consulting, I remember when we finished our projects, transitioning to operations or people who are in the business,
Yep.
that took so much time and money to run in parallel to document everything. There's still gaps in knowledge. They still need to ramp up. They'll take time to be proficient in their role. And it probably would have been better if these people were involved early or like they didn't leave or we had people that would stay in the business because it does cost us, the organization, to ramp up the skills of the person that they can be productive. And the business is just waiting while they're onboarding these people and onboarding in different organizations, even in fintech startups that I've worked at. They give their new joiners 2 to 3 months before they expect them to be high performing. That's a quarter spent just reading and shadowing. And taking on small tasks before you're trusted with the responsibilities of your role.
Yep. But it all adds up, eh?
It definitely all adds up. So in an era, in a generation where AI is a common theme, especially in 2025,
Yep.
what makes GoFigr different than its competitors in the HR space using AI?
Well, I mean, AI is like,
So broad.
who even are we if we weren't using AI?
Hmm.
So we do have AI in the app. So we've got some, I don't know, to give some concrete examples, we've got clever models that read natural language, so resumes, LinkedIn profiles, job ads, all of those kind of fancy things, and extract skill content. Super boring until you
Hmm.
realize the value of that data. So most people, we found with that really early on, have got no idea what their skills are, no idea what skills they need. Companies find it hard to kind of work out what skills they're going to need in the future. So we've got quite some fun natural language processes that look at that. And because we've got access to this amazing external labor market data, we can use that to spot trends, infer what the future might look like. So we've got all of that good stuff there. We've worked really hard on AI based matching.
Hmm.
So taking into account loads of different data points and facets to try and suggest great people for opportunities and vice versa. And this year we're spending a lot more time thinking about conversational AI and conversational interfaces. And this concept of going headless is really exciting and interesting for us. So, in a world where we've got a gazillion systems that we're expected to use just to exist, even in our startup, it's the same, right? We've got
Uh-huh.
loads of third party vendors that we use. We're thinking about how we use existing channels like Slack and Teams and maybe WhatsApp to come to our user rather than expecting our user to come to us. So quite some fun that we've had and we still have on our roadmap for, this year and next year.
Excellent. And looking forward, what are some of the trends that you see coming up in the next several years in workforce transformation? What are things that are exciting for you that haven't reached market and you thinking will have a major impact?
We've talked a bit about AI, but I love some of the outlier cases of AI. I said to you before, I consume so much content in this space. I'm a real podcast listener, and I like to think about some of the outlier cases that people aren't talking about. So there's a concept a company in the US explored of like a digital twin. I love this.
Okay.
And just for this company, they created like a fake version of their CEO.
Yeah.
And they would run ideas past this digital twin of the CEO before they would pitch a concept to the CEO. And I love that. I just loved it. It was kind of insane, kind of crazy. Didn't get it right the whole time. But I love this concept of practicing a conversation or a concept on a digital twin before you actually pitch it. So there's something in there that not many people are talking about. But I just love this idea of, just, I don't know, aggregating all of this amazing data
Yes.
you have on people and what would you do differently if you were able to sort of practice on a CEO or a difficult colleague or whatever before you took your idea to market. I think that's really cool.
When you talk about it, it reminds me, you're from the UK. There's a famous YouTuber who's I think number one in relationship advice. His name is Matthew Hussey, and he created his own AI that is a chatbot that includes all of the content he's published over 10 years
Yeah.
talking about relationships. So you can practice your conversations that you would have with prospective date and get feedback from him based on what he said to other people, because there's only one of him, but there's decades of data of questions that his clients have asked him in conversations on how to refine their dating technique. And now he's just aggregated all into one app.
That's so funny. And I think even Bumble is exploring this concept, right? Of having a digital twin. If we were both on the app, Ray, I mean,
Hmm.
I'm single, so I would never do that. But maybe my digital twin would have a conversation with your digital twin and we would figure out that we were or weren't a match.
Oh, that would be great. Yeah.
Hey, there's like,
Yeah,
now there's something kind of cool about that, but also a bit sinister, right?
it is. Yeah.
Rob, what human element will that rob of us, right? And how do I trust
Hmm.
my digital twin? So I'm fascinated to think where that might go.
Yeah.
We've been, we found out about a company in the UK that has a digital underwriter. So I can't quite figure out whether it's a traditional underwriter in partnership with a data scientist or an AI specialist, or whether they've really kind of like tooled these people up with technology. But that partnership between human and AI, I think is really fascinating and isn't going anywhere. And then I also think a lot about AI enabled startups. So going back to that insurer, for example, it grew something insane, like no revenue to £900 million of revenue in wild 4 years. And so, incumbents are probably looking over their shoulder now thinking, if this AI native first, there's no change, there's no fatigue, there's no, some of these companies only know a world of AI, right? And how much faster can they run? So I'm really fascinated to see how that will disrupt incumbents and markets and jobs. And Ray, even before we were speaking, right, before we started recording, you were talking about your Airbnb business.
Yeah.
Now, what jobs and industries will be created that wouldn't have been possible, pre Airbnb? And I do think about what new jobs might be created in this sort of post AI era that we wouldn't have even imagined. So I spend a lot of time imagining the future and thinking ahead and then trying to work back and look at our roadmap about how we might build towards that. But God, I can't predict the future.
It's funny to talk about raise the Airbnb one. I've been hosting for several years. I'm a super host in multiple states. And one of the most time consuming things is answering guest questions,
Yep.
repeated guest questions that no matter how much you document or message, people don't read it. And then they ask, and then you have to respond. And so in the past, we would have virtual assistants around the world who would just support guests for their random requests, like what the Wi-Fi password is or how to check out early. But now we've built a knowledge base and we're using both Gemini and ChatGPT, and we've created a messaging service that will comb through all of our house rules and guides to answer to the best of its ability and then pass on to a virtual agent for the times they can't answer. And then we refine the knowledge base. But that's something that we're doing this year in our properties, is using AI to answer guest questions.
Very cool, very useful, very practical. And
Yeah.
it's those kind of things that are going to change jobs. Like I'm not fully convinced that swathes of jobs are going to be wiped out overnight, but they're just changing
It's
incrementally,
changing. Yes, for sure.
nibbling into stuff that wasted our time or didn't give us energy, or we had to bring in, a temp to do or whatsoever. It's those kind of like incremental changes that I find fascinating.
Me too. So that's my next question is, which is important for all founders and co-founders, is what is your vision for GoFigr and what the next 5 to 10 years of what it's going to do?
Well, I mean, if we can't achieve world domination, which the big hairy audacious goal.
Yes.
And you mentioned earlier, right? As soon as we took that first check from a venture capital fund, it set us on an expectation of growth. And
Yeah.
we've grown every year, year on year. I want to continue to see us grow. I want to increase that growth rate. We've won our first customer in the UK, for instance, and there's some exciting onwards opportunity with that customer. We've clients in the US. It makes supporting all those time zones challenging, but I'm really proud that we've been global almost from day one, which is really cool. So I want to continue growing the business globally, and I want to continue refining this product, right? I want it to continue to be relevant in this age of like short attention,
Yes.
6 generations in the workforce, work changing really rapidly. I just want to continue making sure that we're adding value to our end users and the people who are paying our bills. And that means constantly speaking to people, their end users, learning, adapting, and just sort of shifting this product to meet the changing needs of an incredibly diverse workforce. So, if we can keep on growing, keep on making people happy, keep on retaining customers, I think we're doing our jobs properly.
And what lessons have you learned on your journey so far that you would like to pass on to aspiring founders early in their journey?
Think about how you're going to acquire those customers. It's different early on, and you're going to evolve and grow and change over time, but you're going to be expected to run a sales machine. And if you aren't yourself a salesperson, you're going to need to quickly work out go to market marketing. It changes all of the time. Everything's changing all of the time. And what worked last year and the year before is not working now. Like, it changes all the time. So be prepared to throw away everything you thought you knew or assumed about selling. Work on that really hard. I wish we'd worked on marketing harder earlier. I think we underinvested in marketing and brand. I wish we'd started those efforts sooner. We have a fantastic agency that supports us over in the US, and I just really wish we'd started that sooner, actually. And use your network, like leverage, like I mentioned before, we've got this fantastic base of investors who really want us to succeed, who only want us to do well and succeed. So just leverage that network for support. It takes an army, right, to build this thing. So don't be too proud for us to ask for help if you're stuck. You don't know how to do something. Um, and yeah, just be prepared to forget everything that you thought you knew. It's a wild ride.
Yeah.
Would
Excellent.
be my advice.
And for our listeners who want to learn more about GoFigr and to follow your journey, where should they go?
Well, our website is gofigure.ai, and figure stands for find, inspire, grow, and retain. So you can find us. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. I also have a Substack newsletter as well, where I publish future of work type content for those who are interested. So you can find me on Substack as well. And so those are the obvious channels, but I love speaking to new and established founders. I love speaking to founders a bit further ahead than me as well. I get a lot of my learnings and experience from founders a wee bit ahead of me as well. So I'm always happy to speak to other founders in this space.
Thank you very much, Helena, for your time.
Absolute pleasure. Good to speak to you, Ray.